The rain plastered her hair to her skull, each drop a tiny hammer blow against her composure. He watched her, perched on the edge of the seat like a feral cat, ready to bolt, and fished out the whiskey. The bottle clinked, a coarse, inviting sound in the cramped car. "Here," he said, extending it. "This'll burn the chill right out of you." "No thanks." Her voice was clipped, almost brittle. He registered the subtle recoil, a flicker of something he couldn't quite place in her eyes. He lowered the bottle, a little surprised. She dabbed at her face with a handkerchief, the cheap cotton rough against her skin. He busied himself with the whiskey, the amber liquid sloshing in the glass. "Weren't you at the Roadhouse?" he asked, the question casual, but his eyes were sharp on her. His voice was educated, a stark contrast to the grit and grime clinging to the edges of this night. "Yes," she said, her voice flat. "Got a lift. The fare was extortionate." "Ah, one of those." He took a long swallow, the whiskey coating his throat. One of those," she echoed, a hint of steel in her tone. "You were asking for it, hitching lifts with those drivers." The words hung in the air, a veiled accusation. Her eyes flashed. "I had no choice. My car broke down. Gonna take a couple of days to fix. Anyway, I can take care of myself." She met his gaze head-on, a challenge in the depths of her eyes. He saw a flicker of something else too, something vulnerable she was trying to hide. "Glad to hear it," he said, but his face betrayed his skepticism. He glanced at the damp handkerchief, clutched in her hand. "Haven't you got a bag, or anything?" She averted her eyes, a shadow crossing her face. "I wasn't planning on spending the night. I have to get a few things in Strickham tomorrow." She flipped down the sun visor, revealing a small, illuminated mirror. "Damn," she muttered, peering at her reflection. The harsh light accentuated the smudged mascara, the weariness etched around her eyes. She attacked her hair with a comb, pulling it back from her face with a violence that spoke volumes. Satisfied, she looked less ravaged. She snapped the visor back into place. Out of the blue, he said, "Do you know how long it takes to boil an egg on the top of Mount Everest?" She stared at him, wary. 4 hours, he answered, a strange intensity in his eyes. Her expression shifted from wariness to something approaching pity. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous tick. "Imagine having to wait that long for breakfast," he said, a thin smile stretching across his face. Her eyes locked onto his, widening slightly. Tension crackled in the confined space. "Well, I've got this book, How to Win Friends. It says that to break the ice, you have to say something." He chuckled, a nervous, self-deprecating sound. She laughed, a short, sharp burst of sound that surprised him. "You see, it works," he said, relief flooding his face. She gave him a small, tight smile in return. The air seemed to lighten, the tension easing. She reached for the car radio, flicking it on. A news bulletin crackled through the speakers. "Escaped last night from the Bromwood Mental Hospital. Residents have been warned to lock all doors and windows." The announcer's voice was calm, detached, a chilling counterpoint to the urgency of the message. "Got a cigarette?" she asked, her voice suddenly husky. "No, sorry," he said, switching the radio to a music channel. "They're always breaking in and out of there." "Bromwood. The loony bin." She opened the glove compartment, rummaging inside. She pulled out a pack of cigarettes, holding them up. "Oh, sorry, I thought I was out." She dangled a cigarette between her lips, her eyes fixed on him. "That's the place they send you if you are guilty of being insane," he said, watching the cigarette tremble slightly on her lips. I've heard of the place, she said, her voice indifferent, but he saw a flicker of something in her eyes, a hint of fear, perhaps. It's funny, I've been reading a lot about those cases recently. Right as rain one moment, and then the next minute. He trailed off, his gaze unnervingly intense. Got a match? She asked, her voice tight. He took one hand off the steering wheel, fumbling in his jacket pocket. Some of them look so normal. To take a look at them, you'd never think they were dangerous. In fact, half of them don't even know it themselves. Sorry, I've got a lighter somewhere. You also have matches, she pointed out, rattling a packet she'd found in the glove compartment. She struck a match, the sulphurous flare illuminating her face, highlighting the sharp angles of her cheekbones, the shadows beneath her eyes. She inhaled deeply, the smoke curling around her face like a shroud. You should have turned left, she said, her voice low and urgent. What? You should have gone left. There's a sign. You've taken the wrong road. Her voice was strained, barely a whisper. He slowed the car almost to a standstill, peering around. The sound of police helicopters throbbed in the air, growing louder. Well, I can't turn here. You can back up. He stopped the car, shifted into reverse, and began to back up slowly. The sound of the helicopters intensified, the blades whirring like monstrous insects overhead. He passed a post with small white signs pointing in different directions at a junction. He chose the right road this time, and they sped off down a narrow country lane. Silence descended, broken only by the hum of the engine and the distant thrum of the helicopters. They glanced at each other occasionally, a silent assessment passing between them. He offered her a tentative wink, but she remained aloof, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. He broke the silence. Do you know, I read somewhere that only 1 woman in 10 can wink. You certainly are a mine of information, Mr. Green. Simon Green, he said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. And you? What's your name? She seemed lost in thought, her eyes unfocused. Sarah Adams, she finally replied, her voice distant. Beautiful name, he said, his voice soft. Did you read that somewhere? She asked, a flicker of amusement in her eyes. The beautiful name thing. How did you know? He replied, feigning surprise. He looked at her, searching her face. She gave him a slow, deliberate wink, letting the corner of her mouth curl into a sardonic smile. He returned the wink with a shy smile that quickly blossomed into a warm grin. They leaned slightly closer to each other, the shared joke breaking down the last of the barriers between them. Did you say you're going to Strickham? He asked, his voice now confident, almost flirtatious. Yes, I think I can pick up a connection in Southley, she said, her voice softening, but a hint of something else, something unreadable, lurking beneath the surface. The lie hung unspoken in the air,